Hello and welcome to Wisdom Wednesday. Today's episode is episode 19, and I'll let Darren tell you all about that here in a couple of minutes. But first, I wanted to announce the winner of our lovely Iconics t-shirt. And this giveaway's winner is Darwin C. And we've contacted them and we'll be sending them a t-shirt shortly. So congratulations, Darwin. Thanks for entering. Everybody keep an eye out in case we do another giveaway sometime down the road. And beyond that, though, I'm going to shoot you on over here to Dr. FineGrit and let him tell you all about episode number 19, where we're thinking outside the box. Darren?
Hey, good one. I like that one. We're going to have a blast of confidence, but think outside the box. Let's do that, right? One of my favorite topics when I teach seminars is this, matter of fact, because it gets into our homestead. You know, we work in a business world that's quick, efficient. We're trying to get jobs out yesterday. But this is kind of a subject where it can get closer to your heart, whether it's a rock or an ornament or a sun catcher, something that's outside the box. And what that means is items that are blasted outdoors typically, or you can bring them into the comfort of your cabinet, blast them, and then put the item back outdoors. So we're going to cover a few popular items for this time of year, and I'm excited for that. And we are going to touch on some bricks on our next episode because a lot of customers were asking for that. One thing I wanted to mention quick is before we've had a lot of customers ask me, I want to see some of your old tricks. Okay, I've had a lot of different things I've discussed with customers over the years, and one of those is abrasive flow. It's a big topic in the summertime where it's high humidity. So I have some tricks here on how to diagnose your issue quicker than later. Here I got some coffee pot, or coffee cups rather, but you say pot on it, right? You're probably wondering what that is. So stay tuned for afterwards. I'm going to show you a tip to make your abrasive flow a lot smoother and much better in your process. And we'll do a question and answer as well, as always. So stay tuned for the video, and we'll be right back with you shortly. Enjoy. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Wisdom Wednesday. Dr. FineGrit here for you once again. Today's episode is going to cover some items that are normally outside the sand carving box. So items today are going to be shown like your ceramic flower pot. We're going to cover the rock getting sandblasted. I actually created a jewelry item as well, or a rock you can hang from your soffit or whatever. And also we're going to cover some sun catchers made out of crystal. So those are the items today, just on a smaller scale. I'm not outside to show you how big of an item you can do, like a boulder or a huge flower pot or a big sun catcher. But this at least will give you the idea, hopefully, to expand your horizon, make products outside the box. Because they do make portable pressure pots outside of what we have in our shop here today. So we're going to cover some good ideas, and stay tuned. All right, so here we are with our product line today on today's episode, and we're going to use the R5 photoresist film, self-adhesive, rather tacky, to work on just about any product. And what we're going to do is we have the artwork created on AccuBlack material. It was printed with Epson. You can also use a Canon or HP printer. If you have further questions on that, you can just let me know. Prints out very dark and dense. Then you put on the R5 material, you expose it, water develop it, dry it. Very simple to work with. Now, the next step is when you work with the R5 material, we're going to apply it to each item. You want to clean the item first with a little glass cleaner, alcohol or ammonia free. Just give it a little clean. Okay, just a little swipe across, and that'll clean up the items. On rock as well, if it's very dirty, some people actually sandblast it. Give it a good sandblast it first, and that cleans the rock. Little tip there. Okay, gives it a nice surface to have the film adhere to as well. So we have our smart jig we'll be using as well. So these are the ingredients here today. They are 5 photoresist film, the AccuBlack inkjet material, ceramic flower pot, a glass or crystal sun catcher. And I'm going to do a rock that's already got a hole in it. So I did that with the sand carver. Pretty neat trick, right? And then I'm going to blast this other rock item I found outside. So, and a spark jig with the squeegees and the wire wheels. So these are our ingredients here today. And my next step is I'm going to apply it and then start sandblasting. So, have a good time. So when you work with rocks, they're porous, they're very smooth. Okay, they might be dirty. As I mentioned, you can clean your rock either with high pressure water, but then you have to let it dry completely before you use it, and that's time consuming. The other trick is to sandblast it ahead of time, and that gives it a smooth surface, more texture to adhere to. However, sometimes the rocks are still kind of an angry animal to work with, okay? Because when you apply the film, even if it's very tacky, you get it stuck in those spots. Sometimes the carrier release is a little challenging because you can't really get it to stick on every part of that rock, right? Might be a little divot, might be a porous area, might not be an open area to remove the carrier. So a little tip there is to create like a little starter. So what I do is I just apply the film to like a piece of glass, or in this case, I'm gonna use a piece of ceramic, fold over the edge and flick it, okay? Now I got like a little edge to start with, okay? So now when I put it on the rock, I got an edge to peel very easily. So I'm going to apply the film, squeeze it really well. And I'm going to go to that area where I started, right here. Okay. And you can take the carrier off ahead of time too. Okay. Now you just push. It's that simple. The more pressure you put on the film, the better it's going to stick. And when you see it kind of darken, that means the adhesion is really working for you. So you want a darker film. You don't want that light color. It's not sticking to anything. So that's your indicator that it's sticking really well. Little tip of the day. All right, I'm going to show you a rock a lot of people use for jewelry. People like to hang rocks because it's hard to get it to adhere to a building, right? Without rope or without a device. So I put a hole in it. So I can rope, a string through there, a rope through it, a chain, whatever you, rope light, whatever you want to use, okay? And that's usually sand carving. You just put your nozzle right on that item, hold it, your nozzle at one spot for about 15, 20 seconds, and you're going to have a hole looking just like this right in your rock. Very easy, very smooth. All right, so this is the image I'm going to put on the rock. Another tip to get the film to adhere, because sometimes it may not stick well, even with self-adhesive film like this. So if the rock is cold to the touch, which normally they are, right? If you heat it up, the film's going to stick really well to it. Okay, if the rock doesn't, or you can't heat it up for any reason by like an oven or your film dryer, you don't have a device to heat the rock, what I suggest then is to reactivate the glue on the film to make it more sticky. And so what I do in that case is take some glass cleaner and just dab the film a little bit with glass cleaner. Windex would even work to make it more sticky, okay? Some people use additional glue as well. If you do that, put it on the film, not on the rock. If you put it on the rock, you have more cleanup later on, and you might stain it. So put the glue on the film itself if you're going to use additional glue. Now, when I put the film on, I had the same challenges because I didn't heat the rock. I didn't put any glue on here. I'm just using the film just like it comes off my release paper. So what I'm going to do is I apply it, right? And I got a situation where the carrier might be hard to get off again because it's not really sticking to a good spot like I would on glass or ceramic. So what I do is I fold it over the edge on ceramic again like this, okay? And then flick it. Boom. See, I got a starter right there. Very easy, very good trick. Now when I apply the film, it's going to be on a bumpy surface. It's very irregular, which is fine with their films because they're very pliable. They'll stick to just about anything, okay? So you work on your image area only. You don't need to worry about all here because your tape's going to be on that spot. So work on your image area, apply good pressure, and then like I showed you, I have a little start with my carrier. So basically, I usually rip it off, but in this case, I'll just go slow on you so you can see. You just kind of push down with your thumbs. You can see the film darken, okay? And then you run your wire wheel across, pop any air bubbles in that membrane area, and then you tape it off and sandblast it. All right, I'm going to do a sun catcher right now. It's made out of crystal, and the technique I want to show here is what we call reverse sandblasting. Some people call it embossing. Basically, just the background is being sand carved instead of the foreground. So the tip here, and this is for people that use Rapamask as well, the dry film from us. When you work with the sandblaster on reverse images like this, when you run your nozzle, trace your lettering, because I know most of you use silicon carbide abrasive, which gives you that flashlight effect. I'll show you in the carving how it works, but you'll run your abrasive right over the lettering, like you're tracing it. What that does is it bonds the film to the glass. Because like I mentioned in other episodes, the glass is not perfectly straight all the time. It's got little dips in there that are not visible with the naked eye. So when you run your nozzle across, it pushes the film down very tight and it'll never lift up on you. So no blow-offs. Like the tip on here, if you trace around the outside, if you have a very, very thin tip, if you trace the outside, that tip's going to stay down. It won't lift up on you. So just do a little trace over your lettering and your outside. You'll never, ever have a blow-off. Once again, I'm using the 180 silicon carbide abrasive, also known as FineGrit. Okay. And what I'm going to do is hold my nozzle 4 to 6 inches away and run my silicon carbide right over the lettering. You can see the lettering just kind of trace, hold down itself. We're on the outside perimeter. Hold down the outside really well. There you have it. There's your reverse edge. Very easy if you do the tracing effect instead of the back and forth motions. So the R5 material, I want to go a little bit deeper, give it more perceived value, more three-dimensional. I can go about 1/4 inch deep with the 5 mil material on glass and crystal. I like to show at angles. I can create like a little bit of a curl in there, a little bit of a dimension, like just create a little bit of a carve. And that light's a really good indicator. If you see that mark, you know you're blasting at all times. That's very critical in this process. All right, this is a ceramic flower pot. You could also order ceramic or porcelain coated product. Some of these materials are very thick on the coating, so some are more challenging than others. This one here, I'm going to actually use a technique where I do little circles. And what that does is like an orbital sander. It's going to basically remove material in a kind of a vortex or a tornado kind of action. So it creates more of a cleaner and faster effect on ceramic. So without further ado, I'm going to put this in the machine and start blasting away. So here in the ceramic flower pot, I have a lip up here. So I pushed my film into that lip. It's very pliable, so you have no issues getting detail up to that point or even over that point. The other factor here is it's ceramic. It's got a very thick coating on there. Okay, so we use what we call an orbital sander kind of sandblast look. So you can put your nozzle in small little circles. It's going to penetrate through that coating quicker, and it's going to clean it off quicker. So Then last, you're gonna hold it at a same angle you would on glassware. Hold it with the hand right inside the pot, nice and comfortable. And then basically, I'm gonna blast at 40 to 50 psi with 180 silicon carbide once again because it's a fine grit. And I like using carbide because it gets the flashlight effect and it's more sharp and more aggressive. And 150, of course, if it would be better if you're doing a lot of ceramic. But like I said in all these videos, 180 can do it all. The reason why I pick 40 to 50 is because it's a 5 mil resist. It's 10 psi per mil thickness. So a 5 mil up to 50 psi, right? So here we go. So that nice carbide sparking on there, removing my coating instantly. Like I said, if I was using aluminum oxide or if I was lower air pressure, or maybe if I was doing the side-by-side technique, it would take a little bit longer. But these little circles are really going to penetrate quicker through your item. Very, very quick once you get that orbital little look going. Just give you an illustration, go back and forth like this. That's all it looks. It takes a lot longer, right? You go back side to side. You do a circle through your area. A lot of questions I get with blasting ceramic too is, what if I go too deep? Because most ceramics, you have what we call a white primer underneath. So the primer is usually white. So when you hit that white primer, you stop. And that gives you a white color. It's protected for the life of the product. In this case, there's no primer. It's just a ceramic material, which is beige. So it's very porous. So if I was going to put this outdoors for a long period, I would put like a varnish or a clear coat over this area to protect it for longer years. Because otherwise you might get like soil deposits or, colored product in there staining that area. So put like a varnish in there because it's very slippery. So nothing will adhere to it. Okay. So there you have it. There's our sandblasted porcelain ceramic pot with 180 carbide abrasive. If you don't wear gloves, you do like what I always do in my classes. You give yourself a round of applause. Give it a hand. All right, now we're gonna rock on here. We're gonna do 2 rocks. One is the jewelry item with the hole in it, and the other one's just a traditional rock. I'm gonna do these with R5. I'm also gonna blast at only 30 psi, and the reason for that is when I blast at a lower air pressure, I'm gonna move my nozzle at a slower pace, holding the film down, so that way the film doesn't lift up. So slower wins the race when you do rock or any porous item, because once that film lifts up, you have a issue on hand, right? So to eliminate that, blast at lower air pressure, move your nozzle slower. The other thing that helps too when you're doing a lot of rocks is apply the film and let it sit for 24 hours. If you let the film sit on there for a long period, the film bonds. One way to speed that up is to expose it to light. Okay, since we're doing outdoor products, you probably have an outdoor source. Put the film applied on the rock in the sunlight for an hour or two, and that film is going to bond way better as well. So a couple of tricks on getting the film to stick better on rock. So here we are again at 30 psi. Run my nozzle very slowly across the mask area, slower than I've done on ceramic and glass items. So without further ado, I'm going to start blasting away. All right, we're going to use silicon carbide 180 grit, the FineGrit, right? And I'm using our 5 photoresist film. Now, as you can see, I'm wearing a glove. I don't wear this very often. The reason is I've been married for 21 years, and I wear a wedding ring. So that metal is sandblastable. So I don't want to hit that wedding ring and, create a matte finish. All right. So I wear a glove. Also, when you put the rock in your hand, if you're not used to it, you hit your hand, it's going to tickle a little bit. Okay. So it's a little uncomfortable at first. So wear a glove. That's why I recommend with smaller items like rocks. Okay. So here we go. Without further ado, 30 psi. Go very slow. Because that 5 mil is not going to burn off. It's a resist. I'm just going to show you here. I'm holding it in one spot even. That resist is not blowing off. It's not going to melt away. It's designed for deep carving capability on rock, right? So I just want to do this one side here. See how deep I was able to get already. At least 1/8 of an inch. But even with the 180 FineGrit. So I'm gonna do the whole image. Go very slow again, so you bond everything down. So like the little counters, those little islands in there, hold your nozzle at one spot. Don't even move. You can see that film is just bonding. It's creating heat on there. So remember I mentioned earlier when you work with rocks, it's good to heat the rock ahead of time so the film adheres better. Well, I didn't do that. I left the rock cold and I applied the film, which is what most people do, right? You're in a speed, you're in a crunch. But when you sandblast, you create that heat on the rock. So I'm actually getting it to bond at this point. So it's another time saver. When you move your nozzle slow, you're heating the rock. Okay? Very good points when you work with items like this. Very slow motion. You have a thick film like a 5 mil, works wonderful. 3 mil would work as well. The trick when you work with thinner film, like a 3, because a lot of my customers use R3 on rock, and I'm going to go deeper, is you give it time to cool off in between passes. If you do that, you can use a thinner resist. Also, if you blast at a lower pressure, it's lower frictional heat. So a couple little tips there. But I'm going to go deeper because this is my 5 mil mask. Again, there's no glue on this rock. I did not heat the rock. I used it right from the outside. I just cleaned it barely. A little bit of abrasive, but yeah, you can see just by going really slow at a lower air pressure, everything's going to adhere just fine. I'm really going deep. I've got about 1/8 of an inch right now. I can go probably up to a 1/4 inch deep on these. Some rocks are a little more stubborn than others. Like I've done lava rock. Lava rock is very, very brittle, very stubborn. So it should take a lot longer on that product. But any kind of river rock or agates, things like that, they're very easy to sand carve. Quartz is another good rock. And, there's anything that's brittle is going to easily sand carve. So there you go. I got 1/8 of an inch carve with detail. All my islands are intact. And that's because of my slow blasting technique and a lower air pressure. I'm going to color fill this one with black paint. So I'm going to use my air gun. There you have it. So same thing applies to this. R5 again, same air pressure. As you can see here, I got a little bit more curvature, more irregularity. So I'm gonna have to move the rock. So it's a little tip, move the rock instead of your nozzle. If you move your nozzle, you have no idea, you might be shooting up here or down here. So if you move your rock, you always see that spark on there. Okay, so you never lose your flashlight effect. So that's another tip. Move your rock, not your nozzle. Okay, so here we go. Again, I got my inside of my ether. I don't want to lose that, so I'm going to hold my nozzle in one spot and bond it in there with that frictional heat. Okay, now that I got that really intact, yeah, see how deep that is? That inside of the E is not gone. That's a fine point on there too. So anybody can do this at home just by taking your time on these items. If you make a mistake, you can't really fix it on a rock. Here's I'm moving the rock, as you can see here, instead of my nozzle. That's because I'm working on a curved surface and I want to be able to see where my spark is. Rocks are very fun to do, very good hobby, it's very good profit as well. I like to put a lot of holes in them or little countersunk holes for like candles. I also like to do a lot of bigger rocks. I put big boulders in here at times. I think it looks amazing outside some of these doorsteps. So done a lot of variety over the years, and very attractive, very profitable because you can put them in a garden, you can put them outside anywhere. This item I'm going to leave without a color fill because it's got a dark rock appearance. So when I blast it, it turns gray. So I'm not going to color fill this one. So that way I can keep it more realistic outdoors. A lot of times too, what I do in the winter time is I'll actually color fill it with white snow. I'll take my rocks outside, I'll lay them out flat, get snow on them, and then I'll wipe the snow, and the snow remains in my etched area. So it's a color fill with snow. So yeah, just being creative out there. People use caulk a lot or paint. Any kind of material is going to fill in just nicely on these. So here's our 1/8 carve on a river rock. And remove the mask without painting on this one. All right, so you can see there's a rock on the dark one. It got a dark surface and my gray edge. Okay, so it's good contrast. I don't need a color fill. On this rock, however, when I carved it, the deeper I went, it does get a little bit lighter, like most products do when you sand carve. However, it looks almost the same color, right? So not much contrast. So what I do in this case is I'll color fill it. So I'm using my oil-based marker from Sharpie again, because it's a very clean process. If I use spray paint, it's going to get kind of messy. And let's say I wanted to color fill it different colors, like red, black, yellow, whatever. I could do that with these Sharpies all in one shot instead of having to wait for paints to dry. So I'm going to use the oil base, and that's important because the oil base will absorb into the porous surface that we created with sand carving. So that paint's going to remain in there for many, many years, 20 plus years. Okay. Even outdoors. So I'm going to just dab it in there. Punch it. I kind of hold it in. You can kind of see it comes out a little bit more when you push on the head of the paint marker here. Okay. So yeah, now you're starting to see it come out more fluidy. So you don't want to put a whole lot of paint because that's where people run into problems when they over paint items. The paint creates a shell and it's more messy and it creates harder to get the film off afterwards. So smaller rocks, you can do it this method. A bigger rock, I wouldn't use the marker. I'd use a regular oil-based enamel in a spray can, like a Belton or One Shot. I use Rust-Oleum. Any automotive paint, again, is oil-based. So any of those are going to be fine. All right, so here's our final reveal of what we've done today with the outdoor projects. I did the glass sun catcher. So this one was carved rather deep. If you look up closely, you're at an angle because sun catchers move around in the wind, right? So a different refraction, light coming in, you get different looks because the deeper the edge, the more light cavity. So the brighter the edge is. So you get different looks. So it's a neat little way to do sun catchers because of the depth you can achieve on glass. Okay. The other one is the rock. You use that as a jewelry item or a sign, anything where you need to hang it from a ceiling or a wall. A lot of people use it for jewelry, like I shown here. So I put a hole in there with the sand carving machine. I held my nozzle in one spot until it created a hole. I don't do circles. I just leave it in one spot, and that's how I got my hole. Nice and smooth. Doesn't hurt on either side, so that's a big advantage. Also, it doesn't take very much time either. So easy way to create a rock with a hole. And I put an etch on there and color filled it with an oil-based enamel. That enamel is going to last a lifetime. So a really good way to accent your rocks, carry those around, and whatever. Then we move on to the other stones. This one's more of a smooth stone that I found along a river. So those are easy to apply the film, sand carve it, paint it, and remove. Smooth, so I can get about any mass to stick. No additional glue, no additional heating method. It's very easy. Now when I get into like this type of rock where it's got bumps and crevices, valleys, pits, you name it, it's a little more challenging for the film to adhere, so that's where I'd use the tips that I mentioned earlier. Okay. Here's another rock. I got a smooth, almost like an agate, carved really deep with a tiger paw. So it's a nice little way to offer to your customer, especially if you're in a tourist area. And then here's the other rock I did. So carved with no color fill because of the contrast capability without color. So those are some stone products, some outdoor ideas like the ceramic. Add your flower. This is good for a lifetime outdoors. It will not fade. It will not discolor because it's got the coating on there. And carve deep into a crescent. So another sun catcher idea for an award. So one last thing I want to mention on the stone side, and as you know, this has been kind of a beginner, kind of introduce you into the stone market. I've done many classes with brick carving as well. I like to get more into that down the line if you're learning or want to learn that process. Here is the big part I want to mention on that. When I work with bricks, I'm using the same grit, 180 mesh, on all the projects we've done in this Dr. FineGrit series. That's the FineGrit. If I was going to put a brick in my machine that I do crystal and glass and so forth, I wouldn't want any debris to fall back into my abrasive because that would contaminate it and lead to problems down the road. So the one brick I do not recommend first, is the concrete bricks. Here's a concrete brick that you get at Home Depot. It's got aggregate in there. So little rocks in there, little pebbles that when you sand carve around that rock, because the rock is harder than the concrete material, the rock is going to fall off, kind of break away. And that falls back into your abrasive possibly. So for that reason, I do not recommend concrete bricks in the same machine as you're blasting crystal and glass. There are methods, like I said, that we can make it work. And that could be a video down the line. So here are the bricks that I do recommend, and I'll start with the harder one. This is a fire brick. Find these at the Home Improvement stores as well. Doesn't have the aggregate in there, but it's very stubborn. Okay, 180 mesh abrasive would take a long time to get any depth. So for that reason, I recommend the clay. This one works really well in our machines. 180 mesh abrasive will cut into clay really well. The company that makes them is called Beldon, B-E-L-D-O-N. Doesn't contaminate your abrasive, easy to carve, easy to color fill. So again, the clay brick is the way to go with the 180 mesh abrasive. So that's the stone market, and what I want to cover now, a little bit of what we're going to cover in the next episode of Dr. FineGrit, and that's going to be the crystal line. We talked a lot of glass. We're going to get to the more higher end products that are offered out there. This is Krosno crystal. It's lead free, very thick, so I can go really deep into those objects. I'm going to blast with confidence as well, because these items are not cheap. They're higher end product. So we're going to tackle those next week on the next episode of Dr. FineGrit and Wisdom Wednesday. So until then, have a blast and blast with confidence.
All right, Darren. Once again, a nice informational video. We even have a viewer who says every time they watch, they learn something from you. So that's great. Speaking of learning stuff from you, you have a little tip there for us?
Yeah, as promised, I try to hold to my promises. So I'm going to show you a tip that I get a lot of calls on during the summer period, and that's high humidity situations. A lot of my customers in Florida, over the ocean, all over the area where high humidity is an issue, the abrasive flow doesn't work as well. And so I'm going to show you what happens with abrasive, okay? This is Dr. FineGrit, right? So this is a 180 silicon carbide, and I made these little miniature pressure pots. All you need is a coffee pot, or a coffee cup rather. You would need a 1/4-inch drill bit and your abrasive. That's all you need to do this. So what you do is take your coffee cup, could be a styrofoam cup, could be anything that's easy to puncture with your drill bit, and basically all you're going to do, see what I did here? Put a hole right in the bottom, right in the middle. Okay, that's your 1/4-inch hole opening. That's what is in the mixing valve on our crystal blast units. So those holes are exactly the same size. All right. So some of you might know where I'm going with this. All right. When the abrasive falls from the pressure pot, goes into a mixing valve, and it goes down below into the chamber down below, and then it gets siphoned into an anti-siphon tube. Okay, so that's what that is in there. So if the abrasive flow isn't coming down very smooth or efficiently, then you have clogs, and you have a lot of spurts of abrasive. You get sand for a long period, then air only. Then you usually have to do a purge or something like that. So here's a trick you can do right from the start, so you never have these situations. And what I would do is make your little pressure pot. And here I just have my lid for my abrasive. That's my catcher. Just something easy. Okay, so we'll dump it right back in afterwards. All right, we have our sand. Basically, you just dump it into there, and you're going to see the abrasive flow. All right. So if I dump the abrasive right in the center, see how it pours right out, very smooth. That's how it's going to come out of your nozzle as well. Very smooth, very round. As you notice, it's not catching, it's not spurting, it's not doing any of that, right? So this is really good dry abrasive. You will not have an issue in your process with the abrasive flow if you do this test. Because sometimes the grid suppliers, not us, because all of our packages are fully sealed. Some suppliers put their bags on concrete floors. Sometimes the abrasive is not tested ahead of time, so it's damp before you get it. So it's good to test the abrasive before you throw it in your machine. So, and then as you know, when you get low on abrasive, see what happens? See how the spatter is getting a little smaller? And then if I tap the pot, it comes out. That means I'm getting low on my abrasive, okay? So if you look down in the cup, see how that is? Pretty cool, hey? So that's like 10 pounds of abrasive. So that's when you add abrasive, okay? And look at there. Now you get your good flow working again. So just a very simple test that you can do with your abrasive flow. If you want, you can kind of look in the center as it's coming out as well. I can't show that on the video. But if you see the grit sticking to the sidewalls on your cup, it's going to stick in the sidewalls inside your pressure pot as well. So that's a sign that your abrasive might be damp. All right. So there's a quick little test how to do that. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you what happens off screen here because I'm going to plug in my steamer. I'm going to create humidity. Okay. Steamer here. So what I'm going to do, take one of my pots. All right. Fill this up. Okay. Coming out really nice and smooth, very good flow. The abrasive's falling on its own. I don't have to tap the pot to get abrasive to come out like some of you may have to do during the high humidity months. All right, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to apply the steam, which is basically implementing like humidity in your process. All right, just a little bit of steam. It's basically, like I said, humidity. It's not water. If I put water in here, obviously it would stick right away, right? So I don't want to do that. Okay. So here, now if you look in the middle, that abrasive is stuck. Okay, it's not moving anywhere. Now look at it. Now it's kind of chunky. Okay, see how it's kind of breaking now? So this is a test you can do. Well, you're not going to do a test like I'm showing you with humidity. You're just going to do the one test I showed earlier, but just something to look for. So if you see that kind of flow with your abrasive or it's chunking up inside there, chances are you're going to have problems in your blasting down the road. So like I said, just a quick little method to see if your abrasive is good to go. The other thing you can do too is just take a salt shaker, put your salt shaker out in your work area. If the salt hardens up quickly, then that's a sign you have high humidity as well. But the reason why I do this is because humidity can get into your machine via your air compressor as well. All right. When hot air is created in your compressor, the tank is designed to cool the air, kind of the opposite of a water heater. So if the air doesn't have time to cool, let's say you've got a big project going on, you're spitting out hot air, the tank doesn't have time to cool it, you're using that hot air into your system. When the hot air reaches your cold pressure pot, because you're not heating your pot, right? It's just sitting there all day long in the cold and dark, it's going to create moisture inside your pot. And that's where you get damp abrasive. So this is another experiment that you can do down the road to scoop up your abrasive in your abrasive hopper and do the same test. If it's coming out smooth, you're good to go. So just a little tip before you start a big project, especially having used the machine in a long period, your abrasive is going to get a little clumpy like this, a little hardened, kind of like salt or sugar does. So do a little coffee cup or whatever you call it. Make your own pot and save you a lot of headache down the road, that's for sure.
Well, thanks, Dr. FineGrit, for letting us know how to keep your grit fine. So
yeah.
We've got
one thing I wanted to mention too on that is, I talk about the hot air from your compressor. If that's the situation, you can get what we call an ambient air dryer. That's what I have on my computer screen, but I'm sure Laura can send out information if you need it. The ambient air dryer cools that hot air from your compressor down to about 67 degrees. So when you have that cool air, you have no damp abrasive. That abrasive flow is going to be very, very smooth, very efficient. So yeah, so you have an inadequate air compressor or a high humidity environment, I'd highly suggest a ambient air dryer.
All right. And if you would like to look into purchasing any of our products, we do have a website, or you can call any one of our wonderful sales reps, and they're always willing to help you. Our website is iconiximaging.com, and the number is scrolling at the bottom here. It's 1-800-643-1037. Now, that does lead well into some of the questions we've gotten today. We do have a viewer from India wanting to know that how do they purchase products from us if they're out of the country? Now, I did mention we do sell internationally, but you'd be more familiar with our areas that we sell to.
Yeah.
So what's your answer on that, Darren?
Where was the country? I'm sorry.
India.
India? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a distributor in India. I'm sorry, I don't have the list in front of me, but if you could email us, you can email my email, djones@iconix.com, and I can get them in touch with the appropriate distributor we have out in India. But yeah, we have distributors all over the world. Germany, India, Australia. We have some in South Africa, Ireland. So yeah, we have a variety of distributors with our products. They'll have like the rapid mask, the washout films, and possibly some equipment options. But I know the film at least we can help them with in those areas.
Okay, that's some great information. Now we're going to move on to some of the questions involving our video this week for the garden. Mm-hmm. Robert Richards here wants to know, what film are you using, and are we using the same film on all of the items?
Great question, Robert. Film, I use R5. That's my go-to film on rock and brick because it's very pliable, it's very sticky, and it's got good resistance, of course, to get depth. So that's the R5. Now, what was the second part, Laura, on that one? I'm sorry.
If we use the same film on all of the items in this episode.
In this episode, yes. Yes, I use R5 on all the objects. I'm trying to keep it simple, just like this whole 19 series has been 180 mesh abrasive, one grit for everything we've done thus far. Because I don't like to see customers having to change abrasive to do each project. They should never have to do that. So just like with the film, I try to keep it one film, maybe two, based upon your product line to do these. So 5 mil R5 is my go-to on just about every product unless I need finer detail.
All right, that's great. Okay, we have a new viewer, Mark, here. Wants to know what markers we were using, and of course, which ones would you recommend for paint filling?
Yeah, well, in this one, I used the markers because I was painting on a desk. I wasn't in a well-ventilated area. Typically on rock and stone, you'll paint with like a Belton or a Rust-Oleum or an automotive enamel, and it usually comes in an aerosol can. But considering I wanted to keep it simple and do smaller objects, I used a Sharpie oil-based marker. You find these at Michael's or Pearl's, any kind of hobby craft type of store. Just the key factor is oil-based. It's got to be oil-based. If it's not, the water-based product will come right off like your washable markers. So oil-based enamel. So yeah, that's what we used. I use that for a lot of multicolors primarily because I can do red, yellow, black all at once instead of having to wait between colors. And smaller objects, I don't want to waste a whole lot of paint and that setup and dry time. So I like to use the markers for smaller projects too.
Okay, thanks. Let me see. How small of a project do you recommend doing? So I noticed the stones are rather small. What's about the smallest size object you'd say you could probably do?
Well, good question. Jewelry. I don't talk about jewelry much in my episodes, but I've set up a lot of companies over the years, whether it's Tiffany Company or Spice Jewelers out in Baltimore. A big hit back in the day was Pandora bracelets. I don't know if you remember those little pebbles on your wrist. We had customers doing those, putting like initials, dates, birth dates, things like that, right on the Pandora bracelet. Golden rings, like your wedding ring, people have done that. But yeah, jewelry items would be probably the smallest objects I've ever seen. And those, it's funny when I walk in those jewelry places, they're wearing those big eye things with the magnifying glasses built in their glasses, and they have to, otherwise you can't see the lettering. So our film is really good for detail. I'll give you that. It's amazing what they can do with our film technology. They're really expanding the limits on it, that's for sure.
That is for sure. And I know here at Iconics Imaging, you guys are always kind of pushing the limits and seeing what new products you can bring for people to help them realize their creative dreams.
Right. Oh, yeah.
So we definitely like that. Speaking of that, next week, we're going to bring them some more tips and tricks on how to do some bricks. I know we had mentioned the crystal, but we got so excited about the stones and rocks that we decided to bring you some more tips and tricks on how to actually do some brick pavers rather than just mention them. So stay tuned for that. And of course, have a blast. But anything else you want to tell them before we sign off and see them next week, Darren?
Yeah, covered a good subject today. We're going to carry on the next week with the brick blasting. So looking forward to showing you that episode. But just keep the questions coming in. I appreciate working with all of you. A lot of technical things on the machines this time of year, again, with the humidity causing some of the problems. So just keep in touch with us. And if just like anything else, if anything takes too long to do, if it's like, there's no way I'm making any money at this, give me a call, because there is a way to make money in this world on this process, but you got to know all the steps to get there. And so don't be afraid to call, email, text, FaceTime, watch all my videos. That's definitely going to help you as well. And I appreciate all of you watching, and we'll keep going with these until we start can do live seminars again, right?
Exactly. And, be sure to check our website for any specials on equipment if you're interested in our products, and always whatever events that we might actually be at in person, when those happen again, including live workshops with Dr. FineGrit himself. So until then, blast with confidence.
Here's by the way, that's just to show you, this was just a full cup of abrasive that we did earlier. And it's all clumpy. So that's what happens. So if I let this sit out for a long period, it'll be fine. But it's that matter of losing that step. So thanks again for watching, everyone. Blast with confidence, and always have a blast out there.
All right. We'll see you next week.